On today's show, Jaguar unveils the production iPace ahead of next week's Geneva Motor Show, Hyundai does the same thing with its long-range Kona EV, and we give you a little update on what's been going on in Tesla Model 3 world. These stories and more coming next. It's episode 199 of TEN, which means, aside from the fact that I've been doing this now for the best part of 5 years, that we're going to have a little 200 episode celebration next week. If you want to hear more about it, stick around until the end of the show. As I'm sure you're already aware, it's the Geneva Motor Show next week, and as a consequence, we've had a few companies carry out online reveals ahead of their cars' official Geneva debuts. The first of these is Jaguar, which unveiled the production version of its 2019 iPace SUV yesterday during a special online broadcast. And while the production iPace doesn't look all that different to the concept car we saw last year, we've now got some cemented specifications to share. With twin-motor all-wheel drivetrain developing a total of 300 kilowatts, the iPace sprints from 0 to 62 miles per hour at 0 to 100 kph in 4.8 seconds, and its 90 kilowatt-hour battery pack gives a 480-kilometre, 300-mile range on the new WLTP test cycle. It also has 100 kilowatt CCS DC quick charging as standard, and like the Tesla Model X, has a front and rear trunk, although Jaguar are calling the front trunk a front boot. Pricing will start from £63,500 sterling in the UK, which is about $87,300 US, give or take, before incentives. The order books are now open, so it looks like Tesla may now finally have some competition in the luxury SUV marketplace. As regular viewers will know, Porsche has been working hard to prepare itself a place in the electric marketplace with the impending launch of its Mission E, a car which it hopes will cross-shop against the Tesla Model S in the luxury car marketplace. We already know that the Mission E hopes to recharge faster than current Teslas thanks to the next generation 800-volt CCS charging system it will ship with. But this week, a Porsche executive took a dig at Tesla by saying the Mission E would be able to sustain high-speed travel for longer than a Tesla Model S, referencing the notoriety that Tesla Model S cars have for overheating if pushed too hard on the autobahn. Since I've not experienced the overheating of a Model S, but I have driven at top speed on the autobahn in one, it's tough to say if Porsche is right or not. I can tell you, though, that driving at more than twice the usual speed limit that other countries have takes a whole lot of concentration, so I really don't know how many people will bother about it anyway. We're back to Geneva with this next story, specifically to Hyundai, which unveiled its all-electric version of the Kona SUV this week. Predictably called the Kona EV, this new vehicle will be Hyundai's first long-range electric car, and it will come with a choice of 2 different battery pack options, a 39.2 kilowatt-hour one and a 64 kilowatt-hour one. The higher-end battery pack also comes with a more powerful motor and, says Hyundai, will travel 470 kilometres, that's 292 miles, per charge. On board, there's plenty of next-gen tech, including some semi-autonomous driver assistance features, full connectivity of the latest batch of smartphones, and CCS quick charging as standard. Pricing is yet to be announced, but Hyundai will begin rolling out the Kona EV later this year, so when I have more pricing information, I'll be sure to let you know. Have you ever wondered how a self-driving car sees the world? Unlike us humans, who use our audio, visual and tactile sensors to figure out the world around us, autonomous vehicles use everything from visual sensors, that's cameras to you and I, to LiDAR, radar, GPS and sometimes even cloud intelligence to see the world. And this week, Waymo published a rather interesting video in which it overlays the various pieces of data its cars identify and act upon in real time. What's more, it's a 360-degree VR video, so you can use either Google Cardboard or your computer mouse to explore the video as it plays. It's well worth checking it out, so I've left a link in the show notes below. Talking of autonomous vehicles, Nissan launched a field test of the robotaxi survey that it's been developing with Japanese ISP DENA this week. Called the Easy Ride, the robotaxi service is fully autonomous with autonomous Nissan Leaf and autonomous ENV200 minivans driving along a 4.5 kilometre, 2.7 mile route. At the moment, you can't deviate from that route, but the companies behind it are hopeful that the trial will eventually lead to a more comprehensive service. As with other robotaxi services being developed and tested around the world, those who hail the rideshare vehicle via the dedicated smartphone app will be asked to share their experiences and thoughts of the service to Nissan and DENA, allowing the partnership to refine their services ahead of a more comprehensive launch sometime in the early 2020s. If you're into electric motorcycles, the chances are that you've heard of Alta Motors, the small Bay Area company responsible for the rather nice Redshift range of electric motorcycles. With an emphasis on motocross and enduro bikes, Alta Motors is a force to be reckoned with at many racetracks around the world, but in recent years it's also pushed out a rather nice, lightweight supermoto bike that's attracted decent reviews. Well, this week we learned that Harley-Davidson, yes, that Harley-Davidson, has made a significant equity investment in Alta Motors to enable it to grow its own electric motorcycle program. Commenting that Alta had experience and innovation that aligned with its own vision of the future, Harley-Davidson's investment makes sense, if not only to help it bring the Livewire to market, but also to ensure that Alta Motors doesn't get acquired by a competitor. Smart move. In last week's show, I shared the news that Porsche was apparently ditching diesel engines altogether to move towards electrification, and while at the time that was certainly the information available to us, it now seems that Porsche may not be ditching diesel completely after all. You see, after some back and forwards on the subject, Porsche had a spokesperson confirm this week that it would likely launch a diesel version of the Cayenne in 2018, alongside maybe a diesel Macan for Europe. Instead, it confirmed that diesel models would be dead in the US completely, with diesels taking more of a lesser role in Europe when appropriate plug-in and hybrid models exists. As always, if this changes, I'll be letting you know, and thanks to those of you who pointed out the confusion and errors this week as the story developed a bit. At the start of this week, I made a short video about some of the car startups that clearly want a piece of Tesla's crown, and while I left Lucid out, and yes, I plan on making a video on them soon, I said that Chinese company Niro seemed to be well positioned to set about bringing its ES8 electric SUV to North America and Europe. Well, guess what? This week, we learned that Niro is apparently preparing a flotilla of banks, 8 in total, to help it plan an IPO in the US, which could net it some $2 billion. This would be on top of the $1 billion it raised in November last year, and certainly help the company, valued at about $5 billion to get ready to bring the ES8 to the markets over here. Will it? Well, we'll have to wait and see. US charging provider EVgo, which has quickly expanded its network in recent years, has announced a major change to its electric car charging plans across the US, slashing costs and increasing the number of minutes a rapid charging session can exist. The first bit varies depending on where you live and the local regulations concerning whether companies can charge for electricity or time, but the second bit should be a welcome bonus for owners of newer, long-distance cars like the Nissan Leaf and Chevrolet Bolt EV. Previously, EVgo's units restricted charging sessions to just 30 minutes, meaning you had to pay a new connection fee to go over that. But now, pay-as-you-go customers can enjoy up to 45 minutes per session, and members can charge for as many as 60 minutes before being required to reinitialize their session. Having spent last weekend on a road trip in my Chevrolet Bolt EV, I can't tell you how welcome that piece of news is. As we've just exited February and we're now in March, it's of course time for our usual roundup of US sales figures. And as expected, it shows that February sales for electric vehicles were significantly down on the sales at the end of last year and slightly better than they were in January. Chevrolet, for example, sold 1,424 Bolt EVs and 923 Volts. Nissan, meanwhile, managed 895 Leafs, that figure significantly higher than the end of last year because of the new 2018 model launch. Some outlets have incorrectly surmised that low sales figures either means people are hanging on for Model 3 or aren't interested in more affordable plug-in cars, but the reality here is that sales of EVs, like other cars, are traditionally lower when the weather outside is frightful. And when it comes to EVs, people tend to buy at the end of the year to maximise their tax savings without being out of pocket all year. My take? We shouldn't worry too much about sales unless they stay low all year, and I really don't think that they will. We all know electric cars can be far more quiet at low speed than their internal combustion engine counterparts, and as such, there's been an ongoing discussion now for some time concerning the use of noisemakers at low speed to alert vulnerable road users to the presence of an EV. We've already seen some noise-making regulations come to force in certain markets, but this week the US National Highway Traffic Safety Administration finalised the rules for compulsory noisemakers for electric vehicles in the US. This includes installing waterproof external speakers on all quiet vehicles like EVs and forcing them to emit artificially generated sounds at speeds of less than 30 kph, which is about 18.5 miles per hour. Automakers have until September 2019 to ensure 50% of their vehicles have noisemakers, and then another year to ensure full compliance. Staying with regulation just a little longer, the California DMV announced new rules this week which will pave the way for fully autonomous, driverless vehicle testing on its roads from April this year. This means for the first time in California's history that cars will be tested on the road without a human behind the wheel. But as the regulations point out, car companies seeking permission to undertake such test conditions must have a hefty insurance policy and a net worth of more than $5 million US. They must also demonstrate that they have a remote monitoring and control system that allows trained staff to take over control of the vehicle remotely as and when required. I'm sure some companies are already filling out the paperwork, so you could see driverless, autonomous vehicles on the roads of California very soon indeed. Over the past few weeks, I've been giving you some quick updates on the Tesla Model 3 rollout, with updates on both the ordering process and production volume. Last week, I told you that Tesla was finally inviting reservation holders who weren't already Tesla customers to configure their cars, and that seems to be continuing apace this week, with more and more US customers telling me they're finally being invited to configure their car. At the same time, a dual-motor Tesla Model 3 was spotted in the wild at a supercharger station, showing that Tesla is certainly going through final validation for the more expensive, higher performance model Elon Musk promised us would be coming to the lineup. Sadly, though, if you're outside the US, you're still going to have to wait a while for your car, especially if you're in a right-hand drive country. Sorry. As some of you may know, I've got something of a soft spot for dual sport motorcycles. Indeed, be it a Triumph Tiger, a KTM Enduro or a Ducati Scrambler, or my favourite, a BMW GS, I can't think of any better way of exploring the world than with a motorcycle strapped with a load of luggage that you can point at the sunset and then just keep going. Well, now Niro has come out with its own take on the touring dual sport in the form of the DSR Black Forest Edition, complete with windscreen, light guard, panniers, and some tweaks to the onboard charging system and battery pack to allow for 70 to 80 miles at highway speeds and recharging at a rate of up to 94 miles per hour. It does at least hint that the zero-emission touring dream may eventually be in reach. Sadly, I don't have any B-roll for this special edition, which is only available in Europe, but I do hope I'll get to ride it sometime. And yes, before you say, I know there are people who have ridden long distances on electric motorcycles that they've modified for the purpose, but this is a version that you can buy ready to go, which I think is quite nice. But the problem is, it's not really long distance. If only it did 200 miles or more per charge. Oh well. And finally, while electric cars still have the same steering wheel and pedal arrangements to other vehicles, they often have some quirks when it comes to the gear selector or driving techniques that you probably don't think twice about if you're used to them, but which can be off-putting the first time you get behind the wheel. And that's exactly what happened to a criminal this week in Austin, Texas. He tried to carjack a brand new Chevrolet Bolt EV at a city stoplight, but after forcing his way into the car by smashing the driver's side glass, the criminal got behind the wheel and there he stayed, because he didn't know how to get the car moving. After eventually fleeing the vehicle, he was picked up by local police and faces a second-degree felony of robbery by assault. Seems that crime just doesn't pay. And on that note, it's time for me to say goodbye for the week. I'll be back soon with more cleaner, greener, safer and smarter transport news. But in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Consider supporting the show through Patreon, or if you're so inclined, send us your bitcoins at the address in the description below. And if you haven't already heard, we're going to be holding our 200th episode of 10 celebration on Saturday, March 10th between 2 and 4 p.m. at the new Transport Evolved Studios in Portland, Oregon. That's next week. I've left the link below where you can RSVP, but it'll be great to see you there and help me officially open this studio. I'll also leave a link below to the Transport Evolved hard drive push, where you can get your name in the credits for this show for an entire year by helping us expand our rapidly depleting storage systems. Well, that's it. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep evolving.